Okay, now we've turned the volume up fully. So somebody write in real quick if we're blasting you out. Okay, so Dr. Page has talked a lot about, oh, someone said it's much better. So this is good. Oh, lots of much betters. Okay. So Dr. Page talked to you a lot about the possible negative aspects of screen time and all that kind of thing. But it is what it is. It's out there and it's not going to go away. It's sort of like prohibition didn't do away with liquor, and just say no hasn't really worked. So we need to know what to do and what's good and what's not good. So I'm going to show you just a couple of smaller information from a couple of smaller studies, and then go to some of the very best websites in early childhood where there are tremendous, and this is what I got hooked on last night, tremendous all kinds of references and resources you can look at. So this first slide here has to do with a study that was done where this individual looked at hundreds of apps that are supposed to be for young children that are available. And what he was looking for is, were they designed to meet developmental needs and what those needs were. So often we just see academic kind of apps. So he was saying, are there apps for social and emotional kinds of things? Are there apps for physical motor skills, that sort of thing? And so, and he was interested in finding out, are they interactive or are they pretty much just sit and watch? So his findings are interesting. Oh, okay, so it doesn't want to change. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Oh, that's tricky. I can do that. Okay. See, I just did. Okay. So these are his findings. Over half the apps he evaluated actually were developmentally appropriate, and they had some pretty good content, but they were almost always academic. And our young kids need movement and play and social interaction and social emotional support and all that sort of thing. So there are a lot of nice apps out there, but mostly on academic kinds of things. Interestingly enough, he has 3 instruments to assess apps, which I first started to go dig for until I found these 2 websites that I'll show you in a minute. This is another item that comes out of the literature, and it is very, very strict. This was based on the Canadian Pediatric Society, American Academy of Pediatrics, specialist in early childhood. I think it's from 2010, so you can see it's fairly strict. And as Dr. Page said, no screen time 0 to 2. That's at least that's what the pediatric societies were saying up until just a little while back. But we have to remember that even if we do give it to those kids, like Dr. Page said, it's a very little use. But you can see very stringent guidelines even as the children age. Okay, so that seems pretty harsh. We said it is what it is, and so there is technology, so we need to be able to use it. One of the best sites that I found is NAEYC, which I know you're familiar with, National Association for Education of Young Children. They have all kinds of position papers, all kinds of guidelines, accreditation, every kind of really quality or gold standard kind of information for early childhood. So they make some interesting points. It's their position that technology and interactive media can be learning tools if, and here's their big word, if the use is intentional and developmentally appropriate. Okay, so they're saying, okay, it's there, we can use it, but it must be intentional use and in conjunction with other materials that kids typically have. Okay, and when they talk about technology, they're speaking very broadly. So mobile devices, software, tablets, technology-based toys, apps, video games, anything that we consider electronic media. So the red is what we want. We want use that is intentional. And the intentional has to be in at least 3 ways: the selection of the technology, the actual use of the technology, and the integration of the technology and our understanding of how to evaluate it. This comes from a joint statement from NAEYC and some early childhood specialists. So, okay, I want to take you, and we're going to hope this works. And if it doesn't, you can go home because this is everything I want to talk about on these places. Okay, so where can I go to find guidelines? Okay, and I've given you three of that are just absolutely fantastic. One is NAEYC, which you would expect to be good. The second is 0 to 3, which is actually a journal in early childhood, very well respected journal. And they have lots of information about screen usage, and they have a fantastic frequently asked questions section. So it will help you give families information that's evidence-based and very reasonable and useful. So I want to go to NAEYC first and just show you a little bit of this. Okay. So this is NAEYC's website, and this is the specific section on screen time and digital media. But what I was starting to say was, I see that lots of people are asking for the PowerPoint, and that's not a problem. We just have to take out kind of extra stuff so it's not gigantic. And we'll have to ask Walt, maybe it can be posted, or if we have your email, we can send that. Mainly because it has lots of live links in it, and that'll be much easier for you to just have the PowerPoint and then go to the sites. So this is the first one we're going to visit, and if we scroll down here, you can get the full joint position paper on screen time. But what I want to show you is a couple of these that I like really, really well, and that can be especially helpful to you. So here's children and media tips for parents. Okay. Oh, please. Is it working on it? Okay. Okay, they're telling, oh, there we go. That the Wi-Fi is just a little bit slow here. Well, maybe it's a lot of bit slow. A little more than a little. Okay, media tips for families and parents. Some of these Judy has gone through, but I like the idea that media, electronic media is an environment, just like everything else in the child's world. So we're going to acknowledge that, and we're going to use it appropriately. Obviously, you're going to set limits. These are very much like what Dr. Page was saying. The big idea is that we try to get families to use the media together, not just in isolation or as a pacifier for the child. Be a good role model. Obviously, if you're always sitting, oh my gosh, I've got a brother and sister-in-law, and they are retired, and they sit all the freaking day on the computer, and I'm just worried. Maybe they won't have language soon. I don't know. But we can't be using electronic media all the time either. We have to be there right it is, face to face with the child. And if the child is using it, using that equipment with them. Judy mentioned tech-free zones. This is one I find particularly distressing. Using technology as an emotional pacifier, either to control behavior or to calm the child down when they're upset. Now, in both those instances, those are social emotional issues, okay? We already have a large number of children in the U.S. who are on the autism spectrum, and they're having difficulties already relating sometimes with adults. And then if we just choose to pacify children with electronics, it has nothing to do with true social interaction. We're only increasing the challenges our children could face. So I think that one, if nothing else, if we stress to families, if nothing else, can we just avoid using that media as either an emotional pacifier to calm them down, to get them to do what we want, or to control behavior. I think that's one we really, really need to focus on, and we'll look at some things with that. There's some good apps, but they have to be judged to help kids with homework. And Judy mentioned it's okay for kids to be online. So this is one that's nice. You can pull some tips from. This one I find especially good, and it's how to find educational apps. Okay. Common sense media. And I really like that idea. Not that we won't use media, but we'll use it with common sense. Okay. And what should then, how are we going to judge that media? As much as possible, it needs to stimulate active learning. Okay. Just swiping is not really very active. You don't need a whole lot of new neuronal pathways to swipe on the iPad. Okay. Kids learn and they improve by active interaction and movement. We know that down at the neural basics. Okay. If you are working with the kid, say with a disability, and you facilitate everything he does, he's not building new neural pathways. Okay. It must be active movement to build neural pathways. Well, this is the same thing. Our kids are already not doing enough. They don't go outside. We have childhood obesity. We have all those problems. And then on top of this, if we have them even more quiet, so they're not running and playing and building and knocking things down and getting energy and all of that thing, they're not building the new neural pathways for active learning. And so that is another big thing we have to think about, all the way down to the neuro level. This is not just, behavior. This is how the child's brain is actually developing. So if it's going to help, it needs to be active. It needs to engage the child in the learning process. So let's say we say a very young child can have 30 minutes of screen time a day. Well, sticking them in front of the TV for cartoons for 30 minutes is not really what we're talking about. It would be use, if you do decide to do that for 30 minutes a day, of good quality apps that you can find that teach or that encourage movement or encourage learning and that kind of thing. So that's why Judy said a little bit earlier, it isn't the quantity so much. You only get 30 minutes a day. It's the quality. 30 minutes a day in front of the, in front of the cartoons is not doing anything. So we're looking at apps that will encourage learning and meaningful learning and social interaction. Okay. Not all apps are educational, obviously. And what they are talking about here, they have some very nice things. And here's one that I like a lot. And it's, this is Screensense. And now this takes us to the 0 to 3 website, okay, with Screensense. And it does talk a little more specifically about different apps, screen time, all those kinds of things. How to choose an app. Okay. All apps are not equal. The content has to be relatable and developmentally appropriate. So if you take 3 things from NAIYC and 0 to 3, it's that the apps must be developmentally appropriate. They must have content that supports learning and activity and social interaction, okay? And they must be used intentionally. So those are the 3 things that they stress, if we can get that across to families. You want to see yourself as a guide, okay? And so these go through. I'm just showing you some of the sites that have especially nice things in them. I want to go back to 1 or 2 other sites real quick. Okay. Let's put this up and go to this site. Okay. Let's. Okay. Now, okay, here's the questions and answers, which I really, really like. Dr. Page said we can't give you an answer, a specific answer. It has to be this number of minutes. But this page will give you some very specific information. So the first question, what are the recommendations for a child under 24 months of age? Okay. And so you come down in here, that if, we'd rather you didn't, but if the family does use the technology, that it's interactive and language rich, okay? That kids are exposed only to very high quality, and that the limit must be less than 90 minutes. I think that's pretty high, but they make an excellent, the same thing that was in some of Dr. Page's information, that kids at this age don't learn from 2D. They learn from 3D. Okay, they have to be able to touch it, feel it, chew on it, drool on it, throw it, kick it. That's the way they're going to learn. And they don't get that from the screen. Okay, so here's another one. What exact limits should we have? Okay, well, they're saying that has to be your choice, but there it is again. Quality of the content and the context in which it is used. So 30 minutes with the cartoon show? No. 30 minutes with the mom or the dad or the caregiver or grandma or auntie, whoever, working, playing with the kid, actually interacting, letting him explore it, that could be useful. But remembering for the child under 2, the 3D you need to have 3D, not 2D. Okay. Let's look at another one. Oh, this one I found really interesting. They said, well, if kids shouldn't interact with electronic media, what's the difference? How come you say they can interact with books? Because books aren't books 2D. Well, books really aren't 2D. You open the book, you turn the page, you feel it. Many of our books for babies have all kinds of textures. And the closing remark on this one is, babies chew on books. Okay. Do you want them to chew on the iPad? I don't think so. So it's very clever. It's made so parents will enjoy it. Okay. All kinds of good stuff in here. For older children, what if your child's addicted to the tablet? Obviously, that's a problem. How do you deal with caregivers? You're going to have to limit the caregiver, because if you happen to be a mother or dad that's working and the child's in another setting. Now, if he's in daycare, that's different. But let's say the daycare is a private home or a grandma's house, where perhaps they let the kids have more freedom with the electronic media. That I think that should definitely influence the family's decision. Do we want to keep that child there? The family needs to establish what they think are the best limits. Okay. And so here's usage on this site based on age, which can be very useful to you. How do you approach television? This one I love. What if you have a kid where Bob, I never understood how to say that, SpongeBob SquarePants. I'm literally reading it. It's so bizarre. Maybe it's appropriate for your kid who's 6, perhaps, but not for your kid who's 2. And they give you some ideas, but they finally end up saying something that families have forgotten to say, which is no, you don't watch it. Annie can watch it. She's 6. You don't watch it. And I think that's something that's lost from a lot of parental vocabulary, is just no, we're not going to do that. Okay. Obviously, you need something else for that child. Okay. Now, go back here. This is actually on the site in a lovely chart. Okay. And I took the information out just so you could read it more easily. But I would highly encourage you, this is off NAEYC site, and it's a lovely chart that has infants and toddlers, a description of the infants and toddlers, and then what they need, and then whether or not technology can meet that. So they're talking about infants and toddlers, and they need to explore, and they have to have human contact and cause and effect. Okay. So what if the family is going to use technology that's just there? Okay. And here's something I think we want to think about. You already know the data on the culture of what used to be called the culture of poverty. We talk about low socioeconomic levels. Okay, won't use that word anymore. And basically the idea being that we already know the number of words that perhaps middle class families do when their kids have language and progress maybe a little better. And that there's really a dearth of language and word usage, less vocabulary, less variety. in homes where there's a lower socioeconomic level. Okay, it has nothing to do with race or gender or any of those kinds of things, background or the language that's used in the home. Okay, it's just kind of a lack of stimulation of those kids. Okay, so this might be the family, especially if we got very, very young parents. Okay, that's another population where the same kinds of things happen. Very, very young parents. So we're not getting new vocabulary. We're not getting modeling. That might be the family that does let the kid use the telephone as a pacifier or an app on there as a pacifier. Okay. One of the things that I've thought about that I think we can, rather than saying you shouldn't do that, okay, I mean, it's not like they're going to listen to you just because you say you shouldn't do that. Even if you're the daycare director, even if you're the head of the agency that's working with this family and home visitors and everything else, probably the better idea is to help them get the idea of just using it with the child. Okay. A really fun thing. I worked in Head Start, daycares, home visiting, lots of that kind of thing. And, the families that I worked with didn't have the computer and the printer and everything else to make these lovely storybooks that we're going to make with all our media. But probably the Head Start has some iPads or iPods, or they've got cameras, and they probably have a printer. So, and usually when you have the parents in for meetings, they're going to be pretty short meetings. Okay, it's not like you're going to bring them in and do a 2-hour lecture. I don't think they want to listen to Dr. Page and me. It's just not going to make it. Okay, but what would be really cool and fun if they have a phone, they bring it. If they have an iPad, but if not, you have some there. Okay, and so you take lots and lots of pictures with the parents that night and help them arrange how they would like it in a book. And then as a surprise to the kids, you print it out and they've got a book to show their friends who they are and who their families are at school, and they take it home. And there's a book that maybe the family could really use with the child. Okay. And then by the same token, you do the same thing with the kids and send it home as, a present for Christmas or a present for whatever. So we're actually using the technology. We're saying, yeah, that family has a phone, so let's use that phone for something that can be useful rather than just pacifying the child. We're avoiding then the passive screen time, okay, which is what we don't want. And then trying to pull in those families and parents and get their, instead of telling them they're wrong in what they're doing, get them to use it in a way that can be beneficial both to themselves and to the children. This particular suggestion here is my favorite in everything I looked up. They said birth to 2, the kids are going to see people using this stuff all the time. Get toy ones, okay? Toy phones, toy iPads that don't work, toy computers that have buttons that push and different people pop up when you push them. And they can play with that because it's 3D, it's creative, it's fun. The most fun you ever have is when your kid's 11 or 12 months old and he picks up the phone and he sounds just like you, but he's not saying anything. Okay, I mean, he sounds just like his daddy. Same thing. He's going to look just like daddy on his pretend iPad or his pretend computer or his pretend iPhone, which I thought was such a wonderful idea because that's how our kids grew up. And we don't want to deny that those things exist, but we don't want our little bitty ones using them. Let's give them pretend ones. So we reinforce play, imagination, language, jargon, babbling, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, let's talk about preschoolers. What do they have to do? They create. Okay, they create. It's when they learn to draw and build and sing and dance, and they're just goofy as can be, and it's all so wonderful. Okay, so what can you do with that? Okay, well, they can freely explore the screens. That sounds fine. One thing I like that they suggest is not just the iPad and the iPhone. Technology, remember, still does include those computers. And so they I think it's a lot more constructive that they also get time to mess with the mouse and the keyboards and all that kind of stuff that they're going to be using Gosh, my kid was in third grade when I went back for a doctorate. I'd never seen a PowerPoint. I had to make a PowerPoint for a class. I'm like, my God, what is a PowerPoint? My kid in third grade, she was 8, taught me to do PowerPoint. Okay, so the time's coming, they're going to need to be able to use it. It's not a bad thing. So let's have that kind of exploration too. This one, though, is the one I love. So, what do they need to do? They build, they create, and then we use the technology for them to take pictures of it and take it home to show mom and dad what you did. Take videotapes of their plays. Okay, so this is creative. We're going to make up a play about such and such. The kids are all going to participate. We'll take a video of it and we can send those home. So easy. Okay, and the cool thing about it is they're still doing all the things children should do, but we're not denying the existence of technology. We're actually using it to make life more fun, you know? So it'd be really cool to take home and show mom your tape of your play at school and ask mom to take pictures of all the drawings and send those back and share them with all your friends that you do at home. Okay, a few more things they talk about: digital storytelling. This one I absolutely love too, and I'm going to go up just a space here because this is where it is so cool. If you're working in daycare, you undoubtedly have children who speak a second language, or else you live on the moon. Okay, there's a big one on UK's, not really part of UK, but on UK's campus, and so they have many children who speak some dialect of Asian language or Arabic language, and of course lots of folks who have Spanish and Russian. So what do we know about those kids? Well, in the literature, we know that they go through stages learning a second language, okay? And there's two things you have to watch for. One is they become almost silent when they're at preschool or daycare, okay? Because they're like trying to figure this out. This is really weird, okay? And other kids may get the idea that they don't talk, okay? So that's a stage that is very natural. Then they begin to learn the new language. They're enjoying the new language. And another danger time is that they sometimes then at home won't use their native language or their first language. Well, that can be devastating. You don't want your teenager not to be able to understand you and have good, deep conversation in your primary language, okay? So unless we are watching for these stages and know how to deal with them, all kinds of things can erupt. So this is just a fantastic, I just love this little scenario. It's on the NAEYC site. So this little boy, and that's exactly what was happening. He happened to be Chinese. He wasn't talking at all. The other kids didn't know exactly what he understood. So the teacher just sent home an iPad and asked mom or dad or whoever to make whole lots of pictures of the family. They put them in an electronic book and a hard copy book too. And he came back, and with all his friends gathered around, he would tell the stories about his family. And he'd use his Chinese dialect and the English dialect, and the kids picked up on that. And they learned about him. They learned about his family. He didn't feel isolated from them, okay? And the other kids did similar kinds of things. Simple use of technology that really addresses some of the major things that happen when your child is learning that second language in a new situation. Another one, which I think is a really simple one, is to have an iPad kind of set up and use one of the apps where you can bring up a picture. So bring up a picture of Cookie, and it speaks it, and then you choose the language it's going to speak in. So you speak it in Spanish and you speak it in English. So the kids are talking to so-and-so and the kid doesn't have the word, or maybe the other kids should try to speak a little Spanish. Yes. And so they go and look up the word and use the Spanish word rather than that child always having to say it in English. Okay, so now both sets of kids are learning in the typical preschool setting. And I think those can be tremendously useful. So the kind of creative usage of the apps can be tremendously important.